Are there any questions?
How does one get rid of personality belief?
To what?
How does one get rid of belief in the personality?
Through the investigation of it. Like, you have to know what personality is. Like, I would define personality as the thoughts you have about yourself as a person. Like, being a person is what type you think you are, and the attitudes you have, the thoughts you have about your worth or lack of it, about what you regard you can do and can't do, and these are what we create a personality around. Being a man or a woman, we create a person about the gender of the body, or we create, if we're a professional person, we can create our personality around being a doctor or a nurse or a teacher. These things have their value too. It's not that they're wrong, but it's to recognize their limitation rather than to believe that they're actually real, kind of permanent states. That's where the suffering comes from. Is the assumption that this is kind of permanently this way. I mean, we all have we react and respond to life in various ways, but then the tendency of you see, like we have a retentive memory. We can hold memories and believe in our memories. Like we make assumptions that I am a permanent Buddhist monk all the time. Since I was ordained as a Buddhist monk, I am a kind of ongoing, permanent Buddhist monk from that time onward to this. That's how it seems, as a perception. But actually what I'm pointing to is that a Buddhist monk is something, the idea of being, I am a Buddhist monk, is something that depends upon certain conditions. I mean, I haven't, not that I disrobe, take off the robe and become a layperson behind your back. But I mean, on the mental plane, the attitude of I am a Buddhist monk is something that arises and ceases according to other conditions. But one can make the assumption that, have a perception of what a Buddhist monk should be, and that I should be like this. Then we tend to feel sometimes worthless because we can't be as good as we imagine we should be. Or we can't be as perfect as we think the perfect Buddhist monk should be. We can't be like that. So we tend to feel a lot of despair when we're caught in the personal identity with being a Buddhist monk. Or say being a man or a woman. A lot of suffering comes from identity with gender. So if your ideals of what men should be, say ideal of what manhood is, and the perfect male, say of my childhood, say that what was regarded as what you should be. Then if you didn't feel identified or that you couldn't be that way, then there is a sense of inadequacy and self-aversion to the fact that you couldn't be what you thought you should be. I assume that applies also to women, just on the level of being a woman, an idea, or the role models and ideals that various societies have for what women should be. And then that carries on through professional life or whatever roles we have to have as husband, wife, or mother, father, and so forth. These can be great forms of suffering for us. Like you hear mothers saying, I wish I could be a better mother, and because you can imagine the perfect mother as this kind of saintly being, and then the actual experience of having to live and raise children and be constantly there and do all the things is you don't feel always like the ideal mother. There's a lot of kind of self-criticism in regards to that. And this you can actually witness to. You begin to see that this personality is not that it's wrong or you shouldn't have any personality, but you're seeing it for what it is. Then it has no power. It doesn't have the gravity to kind of delude and hold you into an inadequate reaction to it. Because these things change. Like I say, being abbot of a monastery is there's one extreme. You could be conceited. I could be conceited. I'm the abbot, and I'm the important one here. Abbots are this way, and then I could apply that every situation wherever I go. I have to be the abbot. So I could go home, visit my family, and they say my mother and father who aren't alive anymore, but they didn't see me as the abbot when I was home, and they were alive. I never could get my mother to see me as the abbot, so it was obviously something that was only appropriate to a particular time and place. It didn't apply in your parents' home. Or if, say, in a monastery, if I go and help, paint the retreat center, I can't very well be abbot while I'm painting the retreat. I have to be an ordinary painting bhikkhu. You can't go around trying to be in charge of something that you can't do very well. You more or less have to be one of the laborers there. So then, because of that, you see that you're not burdened with being in the position you're in, because you recognize its validity only is according to conditions where it's appropriate, but it's not a fixed view in your mind. You don't feel that you have to maintain the image and be that under all conditions, which is burdensome. If you feel that way, then it becomes a burdensome position to be in. It's the same applies to say junior monks or novices. One can assume I am just a junior nun, and that becomes a kind of excuse. You can't expect me to do that. I'm only a junior nun, and a kind of fixed position that one is identified with. And then as they tend towards seniority, then there's this idea. Now I'm a senior nun, and then senior nuns have to act like what? They act like maybe senior monks, or it becomes a problem of identity, of junior, senior. But when you reflect on it, then you begin to take yourself out of it. That sense of it, I am this, I'm a senior monk. You're taking that out of the condition. So it is what it is, and it's appropriate only when the conditions for that allow it to be. So, and that's through mindfulness that you know that. And through ignorance, we tend to, adopt a position and try to impose that on every situation, and then we end up making a mess of everything. To reflect on just what being human is, like what is the idea of being a human being? What do we mean by that? We sometimes use it as an excuse for being weak, justifying our weaknesses. We say something stupid and then we say, well, I'm only human. And it means that we can see it as merely a kind of being human is just being weak and not very mindful and very fallible and all that. Or we can begin to say in the Buddha Dhamma, You're looking at human not from as a justification for weakness, but as an honorable state to be in, to be born into as a human being, because you have this reflective mind now. You have the occasion for enlightenment. You have this potential by just being born into the human realm, in the human body, with the human karma. You're seeing it as something to treasure, not to justify human weaknesses, but to see that the potential for enlightenment is ours now. It's possible for us within the human realm. So then you're raising up the human state instead of being just a kind of weak condition, but into a rather noble birth. Like a human being also is, we have free will. We can choose between good and bad. We can choose to do things that are good or bad. Say on the moral level, we can choose to be moral or immoral. Whereas, say, if we were just conditioned beings, we wouldn't have the choice. That's why you can't condemn a cat for killing a mouse, because it's not a moral issue for them. They can't help it, it's their nature. They can't see it as being bad, or that they shouldn't do it. But we can actually, we can think killing a mouse, like me killing a mouse, I can contemplate that. I can justify, find good reasons to kill mice, they're destructive, nasty little creatures or whatever. Or I can justify the killing, or I can actually choose not to kill them. I don't have to kill them as soon as I see a mouse aimed for like a cat does, but I can choose not to leave it, to allow it to live, you see. And so that we have a mind where we can choose the good, to do the good. This is like what we do. We choose to. We're making a conscious choice now to do good and refrain from doing bad with, say, bodily action and speech. And this is like where some human beings yet don't realize they have a choice. They're just merely reacting to everything, like a cat or a dog. They don't know how to choose. They don't realize they can. They're just caught in maybe fears and desires without being able to stand back and look. But what we're doing here is we're standing back, looking at this, because we can still want to kill or harm or steal or do bad things. It doesn't mean that we never have those kind of desires or impulses, but we've chosen not to do that, not to act like that. So the human form is a moral form. In Thailand, they don't consider you completely human unless you're keeping the 5 precepts. They think anything less than the 5 precepts make you subhuman. So you're not quite up to it. So it's just merely an idea. It's a good reflection, because by keeping the 5 moral precepts, then in the Thai value system, that makes you completely human. Which is a good point to make, because it's to keep the 5 moral precepts, the Panchasila, means that you've chosen to do that. So you're using your ability, your will, to will the good as a way of living and acting in the society. Which to me is like taking the human state and honouring it, rather than using it as an excuse for weakness.
When you were speaking of the rumbling mind, it reminds me of having to do something and it worries you because you think it might not be good for your health. And in this day and age, people are very conscious of trying to achieve health. And I want to have some reflection.
Right, that's a good question. Because we come across that a lot. Because people to meditation are oftentimes very obsessed about diets and vegetarianism and all these kind of issues that are people are very much aware of now. 25 years ago, there wasn't that much. There weren't very few people interested in, say, vegetarianism or in certain kind of special dietary customs. Now, the tendency now is to be to have very strong views about things in regards to what you need for your health. And I've been through this myself, because years ago, before I was a monk, when I was in university, I became a health food fanatic. This was when this was very unusual for anyone that young. As when I went into the health food stores in San Francisco, there was me and a lot of old ladies. I was young then, 25 years younger. And I became a health food fanatic, and I used to, then I used to feel utter content. I'd go home and visit my parents, and they'd be eating what I considered unhealthy food, and I would, be quite heavy on them. They should be eating blackstrap molasses and wheat germ bread and taking lecithin. That was the big thing then, lecithin. High protein. But one thing it did give me was I had quite good health then, and it certainly made me start looking at food in a different way. So I didn't see it as anything bad, but the thing that I became aware of was that it became obsessive, and that wasn't healthy. Where the mind was too concerned, making too much of a problem about food, and it tended to dominate your mind and make a problem out of things. Then, as an alms mendicant, I went to the opposite extreme, where you just eat whatever you're given, even if it's unhealthy. And actually, I prefer that to the other. It's a lot more peaceful and mentally peaceful, and in the long run, I think very healthy, because and I'm also very healthy now, living on alms food. But because there isn't a worry, and you're not creating strong mental conditions around food anymore. I just feel grateful. I feel, like today when all the Sri Lankan people came to offer this food, you feel grateful. You feel a joy at they would spend so much time preparing such nice food and bringing it here, and just for us, they have to feed quite a lot. This is not a small community. This kind of generosity and the the care and intention, which to me was more important, more fulfilling, more nourishing than say whether the food had all the proper vitamins or this. I don't know, and it certainly I felt fulfilled. I felt filled and nourished by the food, because it was a beautiful offering. And so, and I think that, to me, that's why the Buddha emphasized alms food rather than, say, vegetarianism or dietary things, because so much of is really very mental thing. Like I find that because I've lived in famine times in Thailand, where one was malnourished. I've had malnutrition. They had a terrible flood one year in the part of Thailand I lived in, and we didn't get enough to eat for several months. And so I had malnutrition. But I didn't really mind malnutrition because the mind was all right. I could cope with the inconvenience and unpleasantness of malnutrition. It was much easier to cope with that than with a kind of worried, anxious mind. So I decided to trust that my faith and confidence in the Dhamma has made it so that I just trust that what I'm eating is what is nourishing. Yes?
Can I ask you to elaborate? As an alms mendicant, you're in a slightly different position from a householder who I would say has certain ethical choices to make in many things, including what they eat. And how do you have you got anything to elaborate on that sort of ethical aspects of a householder's choices in terms of things like diet?
Well, that is, it's always encouraged to, like the householders, to choose to do the good and refrain from doing bad things or encouraging cruelty or brutality in any way. So, if one is a household where you can buy your own things or get your own food, then you have a choice you can make in what you choose to eat. And if you feel like, say, for instance, that various forms of food are gained through being brutal and insensitive to animals, and it's a very noble thing to refrain from taking that, choosing something else. But then the thing that I would advise not to get involved in is making it into a kind of a fanatic cause, and not to make that the kind of obsession of your mind. To recognize that we can't, we can be so caught up in an idealism that we make it almost impossible for us to survive. And like if you take diet like vegetarianism to its logical conclusion, after a while you can't even eat a vegetable because you're disrupting the life of a cabbage. And and they hear them, and when they pull them out by the roots there, people have heard them scream in pain or something. So that one could, eventually not eat anything. Yeah. So if you take it to logical, this is where with mindfulness wisdom, you're setting the limits on what you're doing. Like say, with vegetarianism, to put the limits on so that you're not making it too impossible or too difficult for yourself or your family or friends or community to live with you. If you're too idealistic, too high-minded, then oftentimes you create enormous conflicts that cause even more problems than eating a battery chicken egg. This is where it's rather than being caught in a too rigid an idealism, to also use wisdom and sensitivity to the people you're living with. I would, if I were to choose, I would be a vegetarian. If I could choose my diet, if I could buy my own food, and then I would definitely be a vegetarian. But but because I'm an alms mendicant, I change that to where I accept whatever's given.
Is this choice, is this ability to choose a blessing or a curse?
Well, if you choose, in a way, not in an obsessed way. Your choices are not kind of fixed. You're not. I mean, if you become a vegetarian as such, as a fixed identity, then you tend to become. You can be very arrogant and look down on people that eat meat. I remember one time a Hare Krishna man came to when we lived in London, came into the Vihara in London, and it was amusing because he was going on about flesh eaters, and he said, "I just left my wife. I couldn't stand to live with her anymore because she's a flesh eater." And he went on like this, going on about eating meat as absolutely despicable and flesh eaters in these kind of pejorative terms, and so then we at that time we went out on the alms round and we left him in the vihara. And this was on a Sunday morning, and while we were away, some Thai people came with food, and they brought all kinds of meat. And so the Thai people had come into the vihara, and this Hare Krishna chap was. I hadn't really said it. I hadn't proclaimed myself as being anything by that time. I just kind of avoid the subject, And usually, we would be vegetarian, but I think this was his just dessert. Was that particular day we had more meat than we ever had. And when he saw that, he just left in total disgust. And he saw flesh-eating Buddhist monks. I mean, he was. In one way, you could appreciate the idea of vegetarianism and not eating meat. From many points of view of kindness and respect for animal kingdom. For also, it's supposed to be healthier to be vegetarian, or there's many reasons to be vegetarian, both very practical, personal reasons for your health, and also for respect for life. So it's to be praised. I would praise vegetarianism, but as an alms mendicant, I praise receiving whatever food is offered, because to me that is what the Buddha intended, and that is my trust in the fact that what people put into my alms bowl is alms food. It's no longer meat or vegetables. It's food given to the Sangha, and therefore it's respected as an offering rather than seen as meat or vegetables or whatever in that way. That's how I try to look at it. Because the reason why the Buddha, the caste system of India was such that you had vegetarian, like Brahmin and the higher castes were vegetarian, and the lower castes, outcasts, would eat meat, and therefore the alms mendicant, the bhikkhu, would be one who would have to receive whatever. We're forbidden to be in a caste of any sort. When you become a bhikkhu, you give up any class or hereditary rights or titles or caste positions. And this means that then the idea is that you go and you accept whatever. You don't just go to the wealthy Brahmins. If the lowest outcast person has a moment in his mind where he wants to offer you something, some food, then you accept it. You don't say, no, you're not, you're too low, I can't accept your food, or I don't eat meat. You're wanting to give that person the opportunity for doing something good. Like a function of a bhikkhu in a society is you're actually giving that occasion to somebody to do a good act. And an act of giving is always giving to a religious person is considered a very meritorious thing. I remember in Thailand where sometimes in the villages there were always pious people who would come to the monasteries and give food and support the monks in the monastery. Then there are always those in the village who won't go near the monastery, and oftentimes men who tend to maybe drink too much and gamble, and they get too intimidated by going to the monastery. But so the bhikkhus go into the villages. Then you see a lot of usually men who you'd never see in the monastery, and sometimes they actually come out looking a bit bleary-eyed, like they've had a bit too much to drink the night before, but they're often taking their rice baskets and offering food, putting food into your bowl. You see, so then I began to see that you're actually, what the Buddha intended was that you go out into the community, and then you can actually even get some of these less pious and more degenerate types. The one moment, that day at least, they've done something generous, a good action, and so then you wouldn't want to deny them that opportunity. So, like the bhikkhu can accept from criminal, from prostitute, from the lowest outcast. You can, if at that moment they want to make an offering, you're not supposed to say, you're not good enough to give me food. The only thing you're supposed to refuse is if you know they've killed an animal for you, and then you're not supposed to take it. Like if they say, I killed this chicken and made a special chicken curry just for you this morning, Venerable Sumedho. Just say, sorry about that.
What do you say if you are receiving too much? If you feel you're receiving too much, then what would you say?
This is a problem. Because because we can't eat usually. I mean, people want to give us more than we can eat. So you have to. Usually, you try to. This is an ongoing problem with us. Like you get on a festival day here, and you get everybody wants to give you something. So you're staggering back to where you're going to eat this alms bowl filled, piled high, and you really can't, and by that time you've lost your appetite anyway. So we have tried in the past year to try to like at Chitters and here sometimes we like people come and offer the food, and we'll have a monk accept all the food, so that the actual food has been accepted by the Sangha. And then we all go, and then instead of people putting food in our alms bowl, the food has already been accepted by the monks, then we can more or less go and take what we need. That works out very well for us. But a lot of the lay people really love to put it right into the alms bowl. So, there's this conflict between being thrifty and practical and being devotional. And in Thailand, we would go on. Sometimes they'd take us into the town in coaches and on special days, and then a whole town would come out, and they'd fill up alms bowls. Then some men would come along with big baskets, and we'd dump the alms bowl, all the contents of into these baskets, and then go on further and fill up. And by the time you've been through a town, you have baskets of food, enormous amounts of it, and you take it back to the monastery. A lot is just kept for future. And also in a Thai monastery, you're feeding a lot of like the nuns usually don't go on alms rounds. So usually the monks try to get enough so that there's enough food for the nuns, and so you're not just feeding one person. And then in Thailand, what food that is, the Thai people in the northeast think it's very good if they eat what's left out of a monk's alms bowl. This the English haven't taken to yet. But in northeast Thailand, they think it's very auspicious. If I still have food in my alms bowl, can't eat it, then give it to them, and they'll be absolutely over the moon about that. Very awesome. But and also the food that is leftovers. Oftentimes you have various other being like animals, dogs, and that to feed. So nothing is wasted, actually, like in a Thai monastery. Here we often take the leftover food to help feed the pigs on the children's farm, things like that. So it's not wasted. I don't think there's any real wastage, but it's trying to. There's this the giving the opportunity for people to get the joy of actually giving, and then that is in a country where food is not really a problem, where people aren't starving to death. It's not. You can't really. And where there's an abundance of food, you have to look at it differently. I remember in a health diet, so change, fashions change, and it was, 25 years ago it was high protein, and now I think they think too much protein gives you cancer, or there's something, you can't really trust it. You don't quite know what is the next, what they're next going to find out. In regards to food, to me, I just wouldn't make a problem about it. I think mentally, your mind affects very much your physical body. So a wholesome mental attitude tends to bring good health to the body. Because you hear about somebody who lives to 120 years old, what's your secret for a long life? And they say, I drank a bottle of whiskey a day. Ate McDonald's hamburgers and potato chips. You don't really know it.
Ultimately, is this something to do with love attachment to the body itself? Ultimately,
what diet?
Yeah, taken to its ultimate and
right.
And life of the body or whatever.
It's a balance, learning how to respect the body without becoming obsessed with it. Like I found. Sometimes, when my first years as a monk, I didn't really take very good care of the body. I tended to disrespect it, so that the result was that I had a lot of illness, unnecessary illness to deal with, and pain, because I've been a kind of mentally oriented person. I always found physical things not very interesting, and not wanting, not giving, not taking care of the body. It would, I would get a lot of illnesses, diseases easily. So then I've learned just more to how to balance it, how to exercise it, how to regard it in my mind. Because actually your body is in meditation, in Vipassana meditation, you're contemplating the body as an object, and as you're aware, as you put your body into consciousness more, that's a very healthy thing for it. Your physical body, when it's accepted consciously, will become much healthier, happier formation. Like, that's why you can see the body's really not you, because it's really a being in its own right. If you treat it properly, it tends to, just like a cat. If you love the cat and you feed it and take care of it and respect it, it becomes a very nice animal. If you kick it and beat it and starve it, it becomes a nasty, wretched little creature. And the same with your own body. If you take proper care of it and respect it and honor it, then it becomes it's pleasant to live with. It's not a horrible, nasty creature to have to live with. And it responds to kindness and respect. Like a cat. I remember when we lived in Hampstead in London, we had this cat, Doris the cat, and at that time I hadn't had pets for years, and so I would tend to pick this cat up and kind of maul it about and play with it, and then set it down and go off, and I thought that was being kind. And so I began to notice this cat was avoiding me. And honestly, I developed great distaste to me. I was quite hurt. I thought, I really love this cat. I want this cat to love me. I want it to love me back. So then I thought, I don't really respect it. I mean, I see it, and I don't bother to try to look at it as a being that you respect. I just say, isn't that cute? Grab it, maul it about, and then throw it down. And if somebody did that to me, I wouldn't want to be around them very much myself. So then I decided to change my tactics. I started, instead of doing that, trying to show some measure of respect and sensitivity. And Doris the cat responded very nicely, like being a cat's not just a dumb a stupid animal, it's a sensitive being. So it responds to respect and kindness, and just like you do. It's not just humans that are that way. So then apply that to your own physical being. Because we tend to take it for granted. Like we oftentimes in Buddhist Theravada Buddhism, you do this asupa meditation. You think the body is ugly. It's not beautiful. You think underneath this is blood and mucus and pus, and there's excrement in the body and urine. And if you go in, there's bones, and there's bone marrow, and there's kidneys and spleen and all these guts, and it's, you start thinking you get this ugly kind of picture of blood and guts and unpleasant things. Well, that is one form of meditation actually that leads to dispassion, because sometimes we're vain, so we think of ourselves that we want to always look attractive, and just want to have an attractive quality, and that's vanity, a superficial vanity, where when we look deeper and we begin to investigate the nature of the body, its attractiveness isn't there. When you're contemplating your liver, vanity doesn't arise. But then it can go too far in a kind of negation of the body, as if it were bad or ugly or nasty thing, which is an extreme again, because the point of a supa practice is towards dispassion rather than passion. So you don't want to kind of negate the body and think of it as a terrible, nasty, ugly thing, a kind of permanent perception of it, because the body is both, it has its attractive qualities and it has its repulsive ones. It's the way it is, and it is a sensitive formation, so it can be respected, and you spread metta to your own body too. You always start out with metta practice with "May I be well," so that this sense of well-being towards your own human body. Then concentrating on parts of your body mentally, like putting, say, your right hand into consciousness, say, of the right hand. Or parts of your body, like you're feeling pain or tension. If you put those you concentrate on them, they are conscious. They enter your consciousness. And that's a healing process. It helps to relieve tensions and to heal things that are wrong in the body by meditating, concentrating your attention on just the body itself, or a part or a piece of it. So it's just that's why it's not self. If it were yourself, you wouldn't be able to do that. But because it is not self, then we start looking at it and treating it in a respectful way. Rather, where if it's ours, then we would be able to do whatever we wanted with it and get away with it. Because it's not self, it means that we need to understand it and respect it for what it is. And I noticed just in my own experiments is that when I've done this meditation on bringing the body into consciousness, the body feels very relaxed. It will start, what might have been tense or painful in the body, these tensions and unpleasant feelings will start going out. You feel, after a meditation on your own body, you feel a sense that your body will feel quite relaxed and peaceful. Or sometimes you see people meditating, they're like this, they're trying to concentrate from up here, and they're just suppressing the body, so they get these terrible, stiff bodies and this kind of strained look. And it just looks like they're absolutely miserable, and the body must feel terrible to be just pressured and suppressed like that. And usually they do something to, cause all kinds of problems, like ruining their knees or backs or whatever, through just forcing and willfully forcing the body and doing things that it can't really stand, put up with. So mindfulness wisdom, you're learning how to live with a human body, how to relax it, how to make it happy, how to its need for nourishment and rest, and all these things are taken into account, not to just beat it down and suppress it and grind it into the dust, because that's asceticism. That's the Buddha said that kind of asceticism cannot bring any good effect. It only brings harm. pain, sickness.
Could you say something about what it is that is doing the contemplating?
Well, that's the being a conscious being. There's this subject-object is the apparent result of birth. You see, so there's what you can say is that when there's mindfulness, then there's wisdom, pure intelligence. It's not a personal thing anymore. It's not a personality or personal attainment. But mindfulness is the path to the deathless. It's through the mind being receptive, mindful, that then there is a realization of deathless. It's a transcendent knowing rather than a personal attainment. So it's not like there's somebody or something that's operating through that. You more and more you realize that this is like a recepting formation, a receiving formation, and it's a conscious formation, and therefore it operates according to natural laws, and when there's mindfulness, then it's the kind of universal truth, wisdom, intelligence. You're in touch with that. There's this kind of union, or communion, or oneness with transcendent truth, which is a way of knowing, wise knowing, rather than a personal attainment. You see, where it goes off, it becomes wrong and misguided is when we claim it on a personal level, like I've achieved something, or as a personality, because that's not what's really happening. On a personality level, you can't achieve anything worthwhile. You just you get conditioned and go around in very kind of habitual patterns as a person, and then through mindfulness, the personality, individuality, all these things are transcended. They're no longer the affecting condition, because the mindfulness is aware of them as impermanent and not self, and no longer grasping or creating anything onto it. So you feel more, you sense, you intuit a oneness, or it's like it's beyond, it's ineffable kind of realization, where words fail, because words are still conditions and tend to create division in the mind. That's why in Dhamma you say, Bhajyatam veti dapo vinyuhi, Dhamma is to be experienced individually by the wise. It can't be described, or it can't be given to you from an external. Like if you believe in God as some kind of external force that's giving you something, you're still caught in this dualistic relationship. You see that the Buddha was very much trying to transcend, get beyond that tendency to create a dualism through language. So he was very much silent on those issues. The Buddha's silences are famous or notorious, whatever. But the Buddha's silence his silences spoke louder than metaphysical doctrine, because these were the silence is where when you're mindful, then there's an awareness in silence, a silent awareness Or as soon as you try to label something, there's a desire to have a name for everything. So that's a kind of desire, a bhavadanha problem, where you want to have it pinned to something, to a name. And that's a subtle defilement of the mind.